The Galactic Council chamber hummed with the usual cacophony of alien voices, translators working overtime to convert the myriad languages into comprehensible discourse. Ambassador Extol of the hegemony adjusted his crystal and sensory array, noting something peculiar in the seating arrangement. The human delegation section sat empty, not unusual for minor votes, but today's session concerned the Terran relocation mandate. "Where are the humans?" chittered Councillor Vrykta, her mandibles clicking with irritation. "They should be here to hear their fate." Ambassador Thane of the Corvian Republic gestured dismissively with one of his forearms. "Perhaps they finally understand their place. The galaxy will be better without their unpredictable nature." High Chancellor Morduin called for order, his massive frame casting shadows across the chamber. "We proceed as planned. The humans have had 3 standard cycles to present their case against relocation. Their absence speaks volumes about their acceptance of our decision." What none of them noticed was the faint shimmer around Earth's embassy building, or the way human cargo vessels had been quietly departing the station for weeks. What they didn't see were the goodbyes, tearful farewells between human traders and their alien business partners, quick embraces between human teachers and their non-human students, silent nods of respect between human engineers and their colleagues from a dozen different species. Dr. Sarah Chen, humanity's chief xenobiologist, had left a single note on her lab bench. "The samples in freezer unit 7 need daily temperature checks. The quantum resonance data is in folder QR final. Thank you for 5 wonderful years of discovery." Her Altarian research partner found it 3 days later, long after her ship had departed. Captain Rodriguez of the merchant vessel New Horizons had simply transferred the deed of his favorite docking bay to his Centauri friend with a handwritten message: "For all the good times, keep the coffee machine running." The Centauri found himself crying tears he didn't understand. The humans weren't fleeing in panic or anger. They were leaving like professionals finishing a job quietly, efficiently, with all their affairs in order. The galaxy was about to learn the difference between a retreat and a resignation. "Excellent," proclaimed Chancellor Morduin as the vote concluded with overwhelming support. "The Terran relocation mandate passes by a margin of 847 to 23. The humans will be relocated to the Kepler 442b system, well beyond the established trade routes and civilized sectors." Councillor Vrykta's mandibles clicked with satisfaction. "Finally, we can proceed with galactic development without their constant interference. No more of their ethical concerns about asteroid mining operations. No more delays in the Proxima expansion project, and no more of their insufferable curiosity," added Ambassador Thane. "Do you know they actually question the efficiency of our waste disposal systems? Suggested we were poisoning entire ecosystems with our standard atmospheric processors." The chamber erupted in various forms of alien laughter. The Zilani delegation made their characteristic bell-like chimes, while the Vorthan representatives clicked their beaks rhythmically. "The audacity of a species barely 2 centuries into space flight," scoffed Ambassador Krelvith of the Trade Consortium, questioning methods perfected over millennia. Good riddance. What they didn't discuss was how human-designed water purification systems had reduced disease on 17 worlds. They didn't mention how human agricultural techniques had ended famines on the Outer Rim colonies. They certainly didn't acknowledge how human medical advances had extended the average lifespan of council species by 23%. High Chancellor Morduin activated the central holographic display. "Now, let us move to more pressing matters. The activation of Project Deep Reach, our new long-range sensor network that will map the dark matter concentrations in the galactic core." The display showed a massive array of quantum sensors, each the size of a small moon, positioned at strategic points throughout the galaxy. Years of planning, decades of construction, and the technological contribution of dozens of species had led to this moment. The activation sequence requires unanimous council approval, Morduin announced. Each species must input their unique authorization code. One by one, the alien representatives approached the control panel. Crystalline beings inserted geometric keys, gas-based entities provided chemical signatures, and mechanical species interfaced directly with the system. The humans, of course, were not present to provide their code. Shall we proceed without the human authorization? Asked Counselor Vrykta. The system was designed with their input, admitted the chief engineer, a spider-like being named Tekelin. But we can override their code. It's merely a safeguard. Do it, ordered Chancellor Morduin. Humanity no longer has a voice in galactic affairs. The override was simply a red button marked with warnings in 17 languages. Tekelin's appendage hovered over it momentarily. Are you certain, Chancellor? Press it. The button clicked with finality that would echo across the galaxy. The first sign something was wrong came 12 hours after activation. The quantum sensor array began producing readings that made no sense, massive gravitational anomalies appearing and disappearing, dark matter concentrations shifting in impossible patterns, and energy signatures that violated several fundamental laws of physics. These readings are impossible, muttered Dr. Zephyr, the Corvian astrophysicist overseeing the project. Dark matter doesn't behave this way. It's as if something is responding to our sensors. In the depths of space, ancient things began to stir. Entities that had slumbered in the cold void between galaxies for eons felt the quantum pulse of the sensor array like a beacon in the darkness. They turned their attention toward the Milky Way with something resembling hunger. Meanwhile, on the outer rim colonies, the absence of humans was becoming problematic. The hydroponic systems on Kepler-186f began failing, not catastrophically, but subtly. Crop yields dropped by 3% the first week, 7% the second. The Altarian colonists couldn't understand what was happening. The humans always handled the biological systems, admitted Colony Administrator Fextel. They said something about symbiotic relationships and bacterial balance. We thought it was primitive superstition. On the mining platform Titan 7, the waste recycling systems that humans had upgraded started backing up. The improvements they had made seemed to involve tiny microorganisms that the Vorthan engineers had ignored as inconsequential. Now, without proper maintenance, the systems were producing toxic byproducts that threatened the entire operation. They left maintenance manuals, reported Chief Engineer Cowrick, his beak clicking nervously. But they're written in their primitive biological concepts. They actually expected us to cultivate bacteria, as if we're some kind of farmers, but the real problems were just beginning. Deep Space Monitoring Station started reporting strange readings, massive objects moving in the void beyond the galactic rim. Objects that shouldn't exist, that registered on sensors in ways that defied explanation. Dr. Zephyr stared at the readouts with growing dread. Send an emergency communication to the human embassy. We need their quantum physicists to help interpret these readings. Sir, his assistant replied quietly, there is no human embassy anymore. They're gone. Gone. What do you mean gone? They left, sir, all of them. The relocation mandate. Remember. Dr. Zephyr felt his four hearts skip in synchronized terror. Get me a communication link to Earth. Now. The response came back within hours. This is Automated Beacon 7 Alpha. Earth traffic control has been transferred to long-range navigation protocols. For emergency assistance, please contact the New Terra Colony ship fleet. Current location, 47 light-years galactic southeast, accelerating, 47 light-years. The humans weren't just relocated, they were gone. And something in the dark between stars was coming closer. When humanity quietly vanished from the galaxy, the Alien Council celebrated their departure. When they pressed the big red button without human safeguards, they discovered why humans had been looking over their shoulders at the stars for millennia and what ancient horrors had been looking back. 3 weeks after activation, the first outer rim colony went silent. Kepler-186f, home to 2 million Altarian colonists, simply stopped responding to communications. The last transmission was garbled, filled with static and what sounded like screaming. Send a reconnaissance fleet, ordered Chancellor Morduin, though his usually confident voice carried a tremor. Find out what happened to the colony. The reconnaissance fleet found Kepler 186f stripped clean, not destroyed stripped. The planet's surface had been peeled away layer by layer, as if something had methodically harvested every molecule of organic matter. The cities remained, empty shells of metal and plastic, but every tree, every microbe, every carbon-based life form was gone. It's as if something ate the planet, whispered Captain Mortek of the investigation team. Ate everything alive and left the rest. Dr. Zephyr reviewed the sensor data with growing horror. The quantum readings show massive gravitational distortions just before the colony went silent. Something big. Something that shouldn't be able to exist in normal space. More colonies began reporting strange phenomena. Ships disappearing between systems. Massive shadows passing in front of distant stars. And always, the deep reach sensors showed the same impossible readings, something vast moving in the darkness beyond the galaxy's edge. High Chancellor Morduin called an emergency session of the Galactic Council. The chamber, usually filled with confident alien voices, was subdued and fearful. "We need to contact the humans," declared Ambassador Krulvith, his usual arrogance replaced by panic. "They worked on the Deep Reach project. They might understand what we've done." "Impossible," snapped Counselor Vrykta. "They're 47 light-years away and accelerating. Even quantum communication would take weeks to reach them, and weeks more for a response. Then we send a faster ship," suggested Ambassador Thane. "Our fastest courier vessel could reach them in 6 months," interrupted Dr. Zephyr. "And that's if we knew exactly where they were going. The human fleet has been maintaining communication silence. They could be anywhere in 1,000 cubic light-year area by now." The chamber fell silent as the implication sank in. They had driven away the one species that might understand what they had awakened, and now that species was beyond their reach. "What did the humans contribute to the Deep Reach project?" asked Chancellor Moore DUN.TECH. The chief engineer consulted his records with nervous clicks. "They provided the quantum resonance algorithms, the dark matter detection protocols, and ... He paused, his multiple eyes widening. "The containment safeguards." "Containment safeguards." "Yes, Chancellor. They insisted on including protocols to prevent the sensors from actively probing certain regions of space. They called them sleeping giant protocols. We thought it was typical human paranoia." Dr. Zephyr felt his blood chill. "Show me those protocols." The data appeared on the main display: complex algorithms designed to identify and avoid quantum signatures that matched certain parameters. Parameters that, when Dr. Zephyr ran them against current sensor data, matched exactly what they were detecting in the galactic void. "By the ancestors," he whispered. "They knew. The humans knew something was out there." "That's impossible," protested Counselor Vrykta. "Humans are barely spacefaring. How could they know about threats we've never encountered?" "Because," came a new voice from the chamber entrance, "they've been looking up at the stars and wondering what's looking back for their entire existence." Every alien had turned to see a figure in a simple gray uniform, human, female, standing with the calm confidence that had always made the other council species uncomfortable. "I am Dr. Elena Vasquez," she said, walking calmly to the center of the chamber, former human liaison to the Deep Reach project. "And I'm here to tell you that you have approximately 6 days before the Devourers reach the galactic rim." The Galactic Council chamber erupted in chaos. Alien voices rose in pitch and volume, translators struggling to keep up with a cacophony of languages expressing the same emotions: fear, confusion, and desperate hope. "Impossible," screeched Counselor Vrykta. "We confirmed all humans departed." "How are you here?" Dr. Elena Vasquez stood calmly in the center of the storm, her hands clasped behind her back in a posture that was distinctly military. "I volunteered to stay behind. Someone needed to turn off the lights when you inevitably broke something." Chancellor Morduin pounded his gavel, restoring a semblance of order. "Dr. Vasquez, you will explain yourself immediately. What are these devourers you speak of?" Aelina activated her personal holographic projector, filling the chamber with images that made several species recoil in horror. Massive, organic structures that seemed to bend space around them. Ships, if they could be called ships, that looked more like living things than constructed vessels. The Devourers are what's left of the first galactic civilization, Aelina began, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was revealing. 3 billion years ago, they achieved what we call the consumption singularity. They converted their entire species into a form of living dark matter, designed to feed on organized information consciousness, memory, genetic patterns, quantum structures. Dr. Zephyr leaned forward, his scientific curiosity overriding his fear. But why haven't we detected them before? Because they've been dormant, waiting in the void between galaxies. The quantum background radiation of an active galaxy masks their presence. But your deep reach sensors ... double quotes. Aelina paused, letting the implication sink in. You sent quantum pulses deep into their hibernation zones. You rang the dinner bell. Ambassador Thane's forearms gestured frantically. Then we turn off the sensors. We stopped the signals. Too late, Aelina replied grimly. They're already awake, already moving. The first wave will reach the outer rim in 6 days. The main fleet will arrive in 3 weeks. How do you know all this? Demanded Counselor Vrykta. Humans have been spacefaring for barely 2 centuries. Elena's expression grew cold. Because we've met them before. The chamber fell silent. Not us, specifically, Aelina continued. But our predecessors, the civilization that came before humanity on Earth, they left warnings. Hidden in our genetic memory, encoded in our myths, buried in the deepest parts of our planet. Stories of things that come from the dark between stars. Things that eat worlds. She gestured to her holographic display, showing new images, cave paintings, ancient texts, astronomical alignments that all pointed to the same message. They come from the void. They consume all. Beware the deep dark. Every human child grows up with these stories, Aelina said. Dragons that devour everything. Monsters from the abyss. Gods of destruction from beyond the stars. We thought they were just myths until we started exploring space and found the evidence. What evidence? Asked Dr. Zephyr, though he dreaded the answer. Dead systems. Entire regions of space where nothing exists but empty planets and dying stars. Always in a specific pattern, always moving outward from galactic cores. The Devourers don't just kill, they consume the very concept of life itself. Chancellor Morduan's massive frame seemed to shrink. How ... how do we fight such things? Aelina was quiet for a long moment. You don't. You run. You hide. You pray they don't notice you. She looked around the chamber at the assembled representatives of galactic civilization. Or you do what we did. You prepare. What do you mean, prepare? Asked Krelvith. Why do you think humans were so interested in colonization, in spreading out across the galaxy, in developing self-sufficient colonies on the rim? Elena's smile was bitter. We've been preparing for this day for 300 years. Every human colony is designed to be completely independent. Every ship is equipped with quantum shielding. Every settlement has deep space sensors calibrated to detect Devour signatures. The implications hit the Council like a physical blow. Humanity hadn't been blindly expanding, they had been escaping, preparing, getting ready for the day when the ancient horror would wake up. And now, Aelina continued, your Deep Reach project has accelerated their arrival by approximately 50,000 years. Congratulations, Council. You've doomed the galaxy. In the stunned silence that followed Aelina's revelation, Ambassador Krelvith was the first to speak. What ... what do we do? Aelina looked around the chamber, seeing fear in hundreds of alien eyes. You have 3 choices. First, you can pretend this isn't happening and die with dignity when they arrive. Second, you can try to fight them and die with honor. Third, you can do what humanity is doing and run. Run where? Demanded Counselor Vrykta. If these things have consumed entire galaxies, where can we possibly run? Dark space, the voids between galaxy clusters. It's not easy. You need perfect quantum shielding, closed-loop life support systems, and the ability to go decades without external resources. But it's possible to hide. Dr. Zephyr was frantically calculating on his personal device. The energy requirements alone would be staggering, and the psychological impact of isolation. Yes, Aelin agreed. It's not a pleasant existence, but it's existence. Chancellor Morduin stood slowly, his ancient frame creaking. Dr. Vasquez, will humanity help us? Will your people share their evacuation technology? Aelina was quiet for a long moment. Chancellor, 3 hours ago, you voted to relocate my entire species to a barren world at the edge of nowhere because we were inconvenient. You called us primitive, arrogant, and disruptive. You celebrated getting rid of us. The chamber remained silent. However, Aelina continued, we're human. We don't abandon people to die, even people who don't like us very much. She activated her communicator. This is Vasquez to Exodus Fleet Command. Initiate Emergency Protocol Omega. The response came immediately. Protocol Omega confirmed. Deployment in progress. What is Protocol Omega? Asked Dr. Zephyr. Every human colony ship has been equipped with enough evacuation pods to carry the population of their assigned sectors, Aelina explained. Right now, they're dropping out of hyperspace at every major population center in Council space. Ambassador Thane's mandibles clicked in confusion. You came back for us. We never left, Aelina replied. The colony ships have been in position for weeks, waiting. We hoped we wouldn't need them, but we prepared for the worst. On the chamber's main display, reports began flooding in from across the galaxy. Human ships appearing at Altarian colonies, Corvian trade stations, Vorthan manufacturing centers, not invading, evacuating. Captain Rodriguez of the merchant vessel New Horizons to Centauri Station, came one transmission. We have space for 12,000 passengers. Departure in 6 hours. Bring essential supplies only. Dr. Sarah Chen. To Altarian Research Station Alpha, came another. Emergency evacuation protocol in effect. My ship can accommodate your entire scientific team and your research data. Aelina watched the reports with grim satisfaction. We've been working on this for months. Every human who developed a relationship with an alien colleague, every friendship, every business partnership, they all became part of our evacuation network. But why? Asked Counselor Vrykta, her voice small. Why save us after we treated you so poorly? Aelina turned to face the insectoid counselor directly. Because that's what humans do. We save people. Even when they don't deserve it. Even when they hate us for it. It's who we are. The chamber's communication system chimed with an incoming priority message. This is Admiral Martinez aboard the colony ship New Terra. Dr. Vasquez, we're detecting massive gravitational distortions at the galactic rim. They're moving faster than projected. Elena's expression darkened. How much faster? First contact in 4 days, not 6. Main fleet arrival in 2 weeks. The assembled council members began to panic, but Elena's voice cut through the chaos. All evacuation ships, implement Crisis Protocol Delta, were moving to accelerated departure schedules. All non-essential personnel are to report to human vessels immediately. She turned back to the council. Ladies, gentlemen, and assorted beings, you have 12 hours to decide. Get on our ships and live, or stay here and become food for things that shouldn't exist. Choose quickly. Chancellor Morduin looked around the chamber one last time. Council session is adjourned. May our ancestors forgive us for what we've done. As the representatives began filing out to make their individual choices, Aelina remained in the center of the empty chamber, staring at the display showing the approaching darkness. You know, she said to herself, I really hoped I was wrong about this. The next 12 hours witnessed the largest evacuation in galactic history. Human ships that had been dismissed as small-scale colony vessels revealed their true nature. Massive arc ships capable of carrying millions of beings into the dark between stars. At Altarian Prime, Dr. Sarah Chen worked alongside her former research partner, Kexival, loading precious genetic samples and research data aboard the vessel Perseverance. "I'm sorry, we couldn't say goodbye properly before," Sarah said as they secured the quantum biology lab equipment. Kexival's bioluminescent patches flickered with emotional distress. "I don't understand, Sarah. How did you know to prepare for this?" "Because we listened to the universe," Sarah replied, checking the containment fields on a specimen freezer. "Your species looks at the stars and sees opportunity, resources, territory to claim. We look at the stars and wonder what's looking back." On the industrial world of Vorthan 7, Captain Rodriguez supervised the loading of the last civilian transport. His old friend Cowrick approached, clutching a small container. "Rodriguez, I have brought the coffee machine." "From your docking bay," the human captain smiled sadly. "Keep it, my friend. Maybe when this is all over, we can share another cup." "Will it ever be over?" asked Cowrick. Rodriguez looked up at the stars, where the first faint distortions were becoming visible to the naked eye. "I don't know, but humans are very good at making new homes in impossible places." At the Galactic Council Station, Elena supervised the evacuation of the Central Archives. Tekelin, the spider-like chief engineer, scuttled up to her with obvious distress. "Dr. Vasquez, the quantum resonance data from the Deep Reach project, should we preserve it?" Elena paused in her work. "Absolutely. We'll need to understand exactly what we did wrong if we're going to survive this. But it was our mistake that caused this catastrophe." "Yes," Elena agreed. "And only by understanding our mistakes can we prevent them in the future. That's how intelligence works, Tekelin. We learn, we adapt, we survive." As the hours passed, a pattern emerged. Not all council species were evacuating. The proud hegemony forces had decided to make a stand, believing their advanced military technology could repel the ancient threat. The Zilani collective chose to retreat to their deepest underground cities, hoping to hide until the danger passed, but the majority billions of beings from dozens of species were crowding aboard human vessels with nothing but the possessions they could carry. Elena received regular updates from the evacuation fleet commanders. Admiral Martinez from New Terra, 70% of designated populations evacuated. Remaining ships will depart in 3 hours regardless of load status. Captain Thompson from Pioneer's Dream, Corvian manufacturing sector complete. Moving. To assist with Centauri colonies, Dr. Yates from Scientific Endeavor, all major research facilities evacuated. We've preserved approximately 94% of the Council's scientific database. As the final hour approached, Elena stood on the observation deck of the Council station, watching the streams of ships departing into deep space. Each vessel carried thousands of refugees and the faint hope of survival. Her communicator buzzed. "Dr. Vasquez, this is Admiral Martinez. All primary evacuation vessels have departed. The Ark Royal is standing by for final personnel extraction." Elena took one last look around the station that had been the center of galactic civilization for over 1,000 years. In a few days, it would be nothing but an empty shell floating in space, perhaps consumed by things that existed beyond normal matter. "Elena," came another voice on the communicator. "Dr. Zephyr, I wanted to thank you for staying, for helping us, for not abandoning us to our fate." "Doctor," Elena replied, "despite what your council thought, humans don't abandon people. It's not in our nature. I understand that now. I also understand why your species was so insistent about safety protocols and ethical guidelines. You were trying to protect us from ourselves." Elena smiled sadly. "We were trying to protect everyone from everything. It's exhausting, but someone has to do it." As she walked toward the docking bay where the Ark Royal waited, Elena's scanner picked up the first quantum signatures of the approaching Devourers. They were massive. Each individual entity was larger than most space stations, and there were thousands of them. This is Dr. Elena Vasquez, last human on Council Station Omega, she said into her recorder. The evacuation is complete. Approximately 2.3 billion beings have been relocated to dark space refuges. The Devourer fleet will reach this position in approximately 72 hours. She paused at the airlock, looking back one final time. For the record, we tried to warn you. We tried to prepare for this day without causing panic. We hoped we were wrong, but we prepared as if we were right. That's what humans do. We plan for the worst and hope for the best. The airlock sealed behind her with finality. The human evacuation fleet gathered at the predetermined coordinates in dark space, the vast emptiness between galaxy clusters where even light struggled to travel. Over 300 vessels of various sizes formed a loose convoy, their quantum shields creating a barely perceptible bubble of safety in the infinite void. Aboard the flagship New Terra, Admiral Martinez convened the first meeting of what was now being called the Exodus Council. Representatives from dozens of species crowded into the conference room, their faces or equivalent features showing the strain of the past few days. Ladies, gentlemen, and honored beings, Admiral Martinez began. We are now officially in dark space. Our quantum shields are functioning at optimal levels, and our sensors show no sign of Devourer pursuit. Dr. Zephyr, representing the Corvian refugees, raised one of his forearms. Admiral, what is our long-term situation? How long can we sustain this existence? Elena, who had been monitoring the technical systems, answered. Each ship is equipped with closed-loop life support capable of supporting its population for 50 years. Our fusion reactors have fuel for approximately the same duration. After that double quotes, she shrugged. We'll need to find solutions. Counselor Vrykta clicked her mandibles nervously. 50 years in dark space. No trade, no expansion, no contact with other civilizations. How do we maintain our cultures, our identities? The same way humans have always maintained theirs, replied Captain Rodriguez. We adapt, we tell stories. We remember who we are and where we came from, and we pass that knowledge to our children. Dr. Sarah Chen activated the central display, showing a three-dimensional map of their current position. We're not the only ones out here. Long-range sensors are detecting other refugee fleet ships from civilizations that learned to hide from the Devourers eons ago. There's an entire community of survivors in dark space. The revelation caused a stir among the assembled beings. Ambassador Thane leaned forward. Other survivors from previous Devourer attacks? Apparently so. Elena confirmed. We're receiving coded transmissions from at least 7 different sources. They're offering to share resources and knowledge about long-term survival in the void. Admiral Martinez nodded. Which brings us to our next decision. Do we remain as separate species-based fleets, or do we form a new kind of civilization? Dark Space Confederation. The question hung in the recycled air of the conference room. These beings had spent millennia defining themselves by their differences: Corvian efficiency, Altarian curiosity, Vorthan pragmatism, human adaptability. Now they were faced with the possibility of creating something entirely new. Tekelin, the former chief engineer, spoke up. On the council station, we worked together effectively when faced with a common threat. Our different perspectives actually strengthened our problem-solving capabilities. The humans demonstrated this principle, added Dr. Zephyr. Their evacuation plan succeeded precisely because it incorporated the strengths of all our species. Elena looked around the room at the faces of former enemies, colleagues, and strangers who had become reluctant allies. There's something else you should know. The other survivor communities we've detected, they're not single-species fleets. They're multi-species coalitions that have been working together for thousands, sometimes millions of years. Multi-species coalitions. Vrykta's mandibles clicked in confusion. How is that possible? The cultural differences alone would create a stronger, more adaptable civilization. Elena finished. Diversity In a weakness to be managed, it's a strength to be leveraged. It's one of the first lessons you learn when you're trying to survive in impossible conditions. Admiral Martinez called for a formal vote. All in favor of establishing the Dark Space Confederation, a multi-species alliance dedicated to survival and eventual return to the galaxy. The vote was unanimous. As the meeting concluded and the representatives returned to their ships, Elena remained on the observation deck, staring out at the absolute darkness beyond their quantum shields. Somewhere in that void, ancient horrors were strip mining her home galaxy, consuming billions of years of evolution and progress. But here, in the space between spaces, something new was being born. A civilization that had learned from humanity's greatest strength the ability to find hope in hopeless situations and to build communities from necessity. This is Dr. Elena Vasquez. Personal log. Day 1 of the Dark Space era. She spoke into her recorder. We saved what we could. Now we begin the long work of deciding what comes next. In the distance, barely visible against the cosmic background radiation, the lights of other refugee ships twinkled like stars in the artificial night of their new home. 50 years later, Captain Sarah Chen Kexival stood on the bridge of the exploration vessel Unity, watching as her mixed human-Altarian crew prepared for the most important mission in dark space history. The first reconnaissance mission back to the Milky Way. The Dark Space Confederation had thrived in ways none of them had expected. The combination of human adaptability, Corvian engineering, Altarian science, and Vorthan logistics had created a civilization that was stronger than any of its component parts. Children had grown up speaking multiple alien languages as naturally as breathing. Teenagers fell in love across species barriers. Scientists made discoveries that would have been impossible with single-species thinking. Captain, reported Lieutenant Zephyr Rodriguez, the half-Corvian, half-human offspring of an unlikely romance. Long-range sensors are detecting normal quantum activity in the target galaxy. The Devourer signatures are gone. Sarah felt her heart's both the human one and the surgically implanted Altarian auxiliary skip with hope. Gone. Are you certain? Confirmed, Captain. The galaxy appears to be empty, but not consumed. Just empty. As Unity approached the galactic rim, its sensors painted a picture that was both tragic and hopeful. The Devourers had indeed departed, leaving behind a galaxy stripped of most advanced life. But life itself remained primitive organisms, basic ecosystems, and the foundations upon which new civilizations could grow. It's like a garden that's been cleared for replanting, observed Dr. Tekelin. Chen, the spider-human hybrid who served as their xenobiologist. The soil is fertile, the basic conditions for life are intact. But it will take millions of years for complex civilizations to evolve naturally. Sarah smiled, thinking of the thriving multi-species cities hidden in dark space, where children, who were part human, part Corvian, part Altarian played games that no single species could have invented. Then it's a good thing we brought our own seeds, she said. As Unity began its detailed survey of the empty galaxy, Sarah opened a communication channel to the Confederation fleet waiting in dark space. This is Captain Chen Kexival of the reconnaissance vessel Unity. The galaxy is clear. Repeat, the galaxy is clear. Begin preparation for the Great Return. Behind her, the mixed crew of humans and aliens worked together with the easy efficiency that had become the hallmark of their hybrid civilization. They were no longer the separate species that had fled into the dark 50 years ago. They were something new, something that had never existed before in the history of the galaxy. They were the children of the void, and they were coming home. 100 years after the Great Return. The rebuilt Galactic Council chamber looked nothing like its predecessor. Instead of rigid, species-segregated seating, the circular amphitheater featured integrated workstations where beings of different species sat together naturally. Human Corvian engineering teams consulted with Altarian Vorthan science groups. Children, who were biological impossibilities a century ago, now served as translators between species, that had once barely tolerated each other. Chancellor Elena Vasquez more single quotes DUN great granddaughter of the Elena who had stayed behind during the evacuation called the session to order. Her mixed human hegemony heritage was visible in her towering frame and distinctive crystalline sensory array. But her mannerisms were purely human. The Galactic Restoration Project has reached a milestone, she announced. We have successfully reseeded life on over 10,000 worlds. Advanced civilizations are emerging on 47 planets. And most importantly, we have encountered no signs of devourer activity for 53 years. Applause echoed through the chamber, not the cacophony of different alien sounds from the old council, but a synchronized appreciation that had evolved from a century of cooperation. Dr. Marcus Zephyr Chen, the current head of Deep Space Monitoring, rose to address the assembly. His forearms and compound eyes marked him as predominantly Corvian, but his cautious nature and attention to detail were distinctly human traits. Honored colleagues, our long-range sensor network, the one we've built with proper safeguards, this time has detected something unprecedented. We're receiving structured signals from the Andromeda galaxy. The chamber fell silent. Andromeda had been dark for as long as anyone could remember, assumed to be another victim of the Devourers eons ago. The signals are clearly artificial, Dr. Zephyr Chen continued. Multi-layered, complex, and using quantum encryption methods we've never seen before. Someone or something in Andromeda is trying to communicate. Chancellor Vasquez Morduan stood, her hybrid nature allowing her to process implications faster than any single species individual. Dr. Zephyr Chen, what is your assessment of these signals? Based on the mathematical patterns and quantum signatures, I believe we're dealing with another confederation of survivor species. Possibly one that's been hiding in Andromeda's dark matter halos for millions of years. The implications rippled through the chamber. If there were other survivor communities, other multi-species civilizations that had learned to hide from the Devourers, it meant the galaxy, possibly the universe, was not as empty as they had believed. There's more, Dr. Zephyr Chen added. The signals include what appear to be star charts and navigation data. They're not just trying to communicate, they're sharing locations of other survivor enclaves throughout the local galactic group. Ambassador Kexival Rodriguez, whose aquatic Altarian features were complemented by distinctly human determination, activated the chamber's holographic display. If these signals are accurate, there are survivor communities in at least 12 different galaxies, all multi-species, all descended from refugees who learned to cooperate in order to survive. The display showed a three-dimensional map of the local universe, dotted with points of light representing potential survivor civilizations. Each one had emerged from the same crucible species, forced to work together or die separately. It appears, SAID Chancellor Vasquez Morduan, with a smile that was both human and something entirely new, that the Devourers may have inadvertently created something they never intended. By forcing species to cooperate for survival, they've given birth to a new form of civilization entirely. Senior Engineer Teclan Martinez, whose mechanical augmentations blended seamlessly with both human and arachnid biology, clicked there, synthesized voice to life. The irony is profound. The Devourers sought to consume all organized information, all consciousness, all complexity. Instead, they've created the most complex, organized, and conscious civilizations the universe has ever seen. And now, added the Chancellor, it appears we're not alone. As the session continued, plans were made for the construction of intergalactic communication arrays and eventually, perhaps, contact with these distant cousins who had survived the same ancient horror. But in the quiet moments between formal discussions, the representatives looked around the chamber with a satisfaction their ancestors could never have imagined. They were no longer separate species competing for resources and dominance. They were something new, a hybrid civilization that had learned to turn diversity into strength, cooperation into survival, and hope into reality. The humans had been right about something else, too, looking up at the stars and wondering what was looking back had led not to paranoia and fear, but to the greatest alliance in galactic history. And now, as they prepared to reach out to the stars once more, they did so not as conquerors or competitors, but as gardeners ready to plant new seeds of cooperation in the infinite soil of space.